Here is a major problem that you can avoid that can totally screw up your credit rating, but I'm also going to give you some tips on how to resolve it if that's happened to you. If you've ever bought anything on finance, particularly a hire purchase agreement for a vehicle, then this can certainly be a good warning for you. But first of all, if you're new to me, I'm Daniel Smith, a barrister of England and Wales, and regardless of what jurisdiction you're in, the broad rules that apply to credit reports are probably going to apply here, although I'm speaking about England and Wales as that's where I practice as a barrister. I also run the Black Belt Barrister channel, which many of you may have come to me for. So let's get into this heart of the problem and talk about it. So I very often get clients that have had problems with hire purchase agreements for vehicles or other products that they've bought on finance, and then they have a problem with the product or the vehicle in many of those hire purchase cases. Just as a brief overview for those of you that either have one and don't fully understand it, or you don't have one, you've thought about having one and you still don't yet understand it, a hire purchase agreement is exactly what it sounds like. You're hiring it, then you're purchasing it. So say for a vehicle, you will technically be hiring the vehicle from the finance company who has purchased it from the dealer, which is confusing initially because you go into the dealer to choose the vehicle and so on, but I'll come back to that in a minute. And after a certain number of hire payments to the finance company, you get the option to purchase it at the end, usually referred to as a balloon payment or a final payment or something of that nature. So you are purchasing the vehicle at the end at your option. If you don't want to purchase it, then you hand it back. You've nothing else to pay. The finance company does whatever they wish. They will usually sell it, although some companies tend to then put it back into as a fleet vehicle, or they rehire it to someone else or that sort of thing. However, in the event that you develop a problem with it, then you very often will be confused as to with whom you deal. And so this is where an understanding of how this has all come about is really important. So your contract, albeit you have selected the vehicle at the dealer, your contract is really with the finance company because they've purchased it from the dealer, and in turn they are hiring it to you, and ultimately they will sell it to you. So you've got this triangular arrangement or three-party arrangement, albeit you're not in contract with the dealer. So then one of the common mistakes that people make is they go straight back to the dealer to resolve the problem. That is only really a mistake in so much as whilst the dealer is probably best placed to resolve the problem and conduct repairs, the contract is actually with the finance company, so your ultimate claim should be against the finance company. However, without jumping into the law too much, because that's reserved for my law channel, there are cases that have gone to court where the court has held that the dealer has been acting as the agent for the finance company, and thus the repairs carried out by the dealer were carried out on behalf of the finance company. I'll come back to that more in a moment, but let's deal with the real issue at hand here. When you have these problems and you've asked the dealer, or even if you've been astute and you've asked the finance company to arrange repairs and they've conducted repairs, or they're in the process of conducting repairs, whether they're ongoing or whether they've attempted and failed or whatever, don't be tempted to stop the payments. This is the core problem. Now, even if you've validly rejected the vehicle, there's an overlap here between the law and reality. So in reality, the missed payments are going to be reported to your credit reference agencies, and that can totally screw up your credit report. While strictly speaking, when you've validly rejected a vehicle, your obligation to make those payments ends. But the finance company, I can assure you, in most cases, are going to report non-payment to your credit reference agencies because they don't accept that you validly rejected the vehicle. And only when a court has determined that you validly rejected the vehicle and upheld your claim, then you'll find the finance company perfectly willing then to report back to the credit reference agency that actually those payments weren't missed, you validly rejected the vehicle, and thus the agreement and your obligations under it terminated. So very often we will see cases where there have been disputes for many months or even in some cases over years. These issues have prevailed, and on occasion parties will stop paying the finance company these payments. Thus, they will in turn report it to the credit reference agencies, and it's one missed payment, two missed payments, and then ultimately, if you just stop paying altogether, usually after 6 payments, or certainly after a balloon payment has been missed, the finance company will report that as a default on the account. This can have a knock-on effect across every other account that you hold, every other credit account, and it can have a devastating effect on your life. Now, whilst we're on this channel and how to build wealth, as I indicate in the bottom corner, I don't advocate taking out credit to build wealth. But since this is broadly a money channel, I'm going to talk about all things money and how they can affect you. And this is certainly one of them. Because if you do rely on a mortgage, or you do rely on other credit facilities, as many people do, this can have a devastating effect across all of those accounts, because the finance company is going to report this on a monthly basis back to any one of a number or collection of credit reference agencies. So what do you do about it? Well, initially, the first thing you could possibly do is discuss it with the finance company. You could ask them to put the payments on hold whilst this dispute is ongoing. Now, in many cases, they are going to insist that these payments are made and deny the fact that there's a problem with the vehicle or that you validly rejected it. But if you put it in writing, and ideally through a lawyer, so that it's put out in a legal format and all of the law and everything else is set out, that you are rejecting the vehicle if that's what you're doing, or let's say they've attempted the repair. This is usually how it comes about. They've attempted a repair, the repair's failed, and then you reject the vehicle. Albeit the finance company will very often refuse to accept your rejection, even though it's a statutory right to reject. Then on the one hand, whilst you can discuss it with the finance company and say, well, please don't report this as a missed payment while this is all outstanding, I will sue you, or I'll take you to the financial ombudsman service and ask them to insist that they either stop the reports or they remove the reports from your record. Or if it goes all the way to court, that's one thing, that's one remedy that you'll be asking the court for, in addition to a return of monies. And so those broadly are the 3 things you can do about it. You can discuss it with the finance company, and they may be amenable to not report it until the problem is resolved, especially if you set it out in full at the outset and you say the dealer has done XYZ, or there's XYZ problem with the vehicle or the product, whatever it is. And please don't report this to the credit reference agencies in the meantime whilst you're trying to sort this out. The second option is to go straight to the Financial Ombudsman Service. You need to do that within a set period of time, 6 months within England and Wales, from the final letter of rejection of your complaint to the finance company. And even then, when you go to the Financial Ombudsman Service, they won't always, as a matter of course, insist that the finance company remove this from your record, because they won't necessarily consider that the main issue. The main issue they will consider is what payments you've made and what they've done to resolve your complaints about the vehicle or whatever the product is, and things like that. So you do need to make it absolutely clear to the Financial Ombudsman Service that you want this expunged from your credit report. Otherwise, they may not insist that the finance company do that. And all else fails, you do have to resort to court. But also make sure that that is part of your claim, not just a claim for the monies that you've paid. And so there's a very useful case, which I will put the name of in the description box below, where the court found that the vehicle was validly rejected, and the court broke down the payments that were owing back to the claimant individual that bought the vehicle in terms of the payments that were made up to the date of rejection, the payments since the date of rejection, and then, of course, the court made a deduction for months of use of that vehicle. But as I say, the final warning is don't just stop the payments. Even though legally speaking, the obligation to make those payments ends, that doesn't stop the finance company from reporting non-payment to the credit reference agencies. This happens. It happens all the time. It's a big pain, and it causes a severe impact on the rest of your life, because other credit companies will get a ping that there's something new on your report, and they'll conduct a review. So as a side note, if you are, say, looking to pay down debt on something, and you do need the other accounts open, even if you're on a journey to pay off your credit, which I recommend you do if you want to build wealth. But if you need the others open whilst you're paying some of them down, I'd recommend that you do it over a period of time and not just in one big lump, because one big lump is a major change on your credit file, and that will trigger a review on the other accounts. And what can happen is that they can suddenly take the view that you are paying down one chunk of a loan and therefore you don't have as much money anymore. Therefore, you're a bigger risk. Therefore, they can reduce the credit availability on other accounts, which could cause you monthly cash flow problems if you rely on those other accounts. So I'd recommend you do it gradually, incrementally, so that you avoid these triggers of reviews on your accounts. I hope all of that is useful. Please do avoid those kind of problems by making sure you stay on top of these things. Make sure you keep the payments up, keep the communication lines open with the finance company, the dealer. Make sure they're all in the picture. Your letters should be copied to each of those, both the finance company and the dealer that's involved in the transaction. And of course, the Financial Ombudsman Service. Use a lawyer if you can, and ultimately, if you need to sue them, you need to sue them. But make sure that's part of your claim as a remedy that you want this expunged from your credit report. I hope that's useful. If it is, please do take the time to subscribe to this new channel of mine, relatively new channel of mine. I thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.